Cold wind was blowing, it was the month of October. A light mist floated through the streets of Salem, Massachusetts. The branches of the lush green trees made strange noises, as if someone was whispering. Natalie Carter, an art historian, had come to Salem in search of an old painting. She had heard that there was a rare painting from the 1800s in an antique store, of a woman who looked like she was staring at you from every direction. When Natalie first arrived at the store, the air suddenly felt colder. The bell above the door rang, ting ting. Julian Moore, the store's owner, came forward. "First time in Salem?" he asked, his voice carrying a strange tremor. "Yes, I'm here for that painting. The Blackwell portrait." Julian's face went completely stiff. "Why are you looking for it?" "I want to know its history. I'm writing a book on 19th century art." Julian gestured quietly and led her to a closed room in the back. On the wall hung a large painting, a portrait of a woman, whose eyes were staring directly at Natalie. Her face was pale, eyes deep black, hair flowing, and lips curled into a faint smile that looked terrifying. "Margot Blackwell," Julian said, "this is her painting, but people say it's not just a picture, it's a doorway." Natalie smiled. "A doorway? To what?" "To her soul," Julian replied. "And those eyes, they move." That night, Natalie bought the painting and placed it in her hotel room. Around 3:07 a.m. that night, Natalie woke up. There was a sound in the room, like someone whispering. She turned on the light, and looked at the painting. Something had changed. Margot's eyes were now looking to the right, as if staring toward Natalie's bed. Natalie tried to laugh. "I'm just tired, probably an illusion." But as soon as she turned the light off again, she felt like someone was breathing into her ear. "Natalie," came a soft voice. She screamed. By morning, there were dark circles under her eyes. But she convinced herself, maybe it was just a dream. The next day she went to the library and began researching Margot Blackwell. Among the files she found, there was a newspaper clipping, "Local woman accused of witchcraft 1871. Margot was accused of practicing witchcraft and making children disappear. But no evidence was ever found. Still, a mob burned her alive. But the story didn't end there. They say her soul has never found peace. While returning to the hotel, Natalie felt like someone was following her. Whenever she turned around, no one was there, but every time it felt like a shadow walked with her. As soon as she entered her hotel room, the mirror fogged up by itself. And then a figure appeared in it, a woman, the same Margot, but blood was flowing from her eyes. Natalie turned around. There was nothing there. But when she looked at the painting, Margot now had red marks beneath her eyes. Terrified, she grabbed a knife to rip the painting, but as soon as the knife touched it, blood started oozing from Natalie's wrist, as if someone had slashed it. She screamed, fell and fainted. When Natalie opened her eyes, she found a bandage wrapped around her wrist. Detective Ryan Hale was standing in the room. "The hotel staff found you unconscious, bleeding. What happened here?" Natalie couldn't speak. She just pointed toward the wall. But the wall was empty. The painting was gone. "There was a painting here," Natalie said in a trembling voice, "Margot Blackwell's." Ryan lowered his head. "There are many stories linked to that name in Salem. The people who know too much about her, they don't stay alive." Natalie panicked. "I'm not going back." But that very night, she got a call from Ava, her younger sister. "Natalie, something strange is happening. A painting suddenly appeared in front of my eyes. There was a shadow of a woman outside my window. She was staring at me. Her face had burn marks." The painting had now reached Ava's house in Los Angeles. Natalie called Julian Moore. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Julian said, "Because no one believes it. When my wife died, everyone blamed me. But that painting, it's in our blood." Natalie was shocked. "What do you mean?" "Margot Blackwell was my great-grandmother." Silence filled the air. "She wasn't a witch, Natalie. She was a mother who begged the villagers to save her son. But they burned her alive instead. Since then she keeps coming back. To every person who dares to look into her eyes. And now her spirit has chosen you. That night, Natalie couldn't sleep. Every corner, every wall, and every silence was sowing a seed of fear within her. Ava's voice still echoed in her ears. She was staring at me. She decided to go to that old corner of the hotel where she had first seen the painting. But as soon as she reached that room, the wall was completely clean as if nothing had ever been there. But then, a wooden cupboard near the wall started sliding on its own. The sound of old wood cracking echoed. Natalie trembled with fear, but gathering her courage, she peeked behind the cupboard. There it was, a narrow thin crack like a secret door. She turned on her phone's flashlight and slowly entered the crack. There were stairs descending into darkness. With every step, dust swirled around, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. But there was something strange in that darkness, as if someone was breathing, very close. As she reached the bottom, she saw an old basement. Broken furniture, old locks, and burned handprints on the walls. Then, in one corner, something shined, a heavy iron chest. Dust had settled on the chest, but a name was engraved on it. M. Blackwell 1871. With trembling hands, Natalie opened it. Inside were an old burnt piece of cloth, a black threaded necklace, and a letter, still intact despite the passage of time. With shaking fingers, she opened the letter. If anyone looks into my eyes, they must understand my pain. I am not dying. I will live in every soul that fears the truth. And my eyes will follow you, until you find my son. Natalie gasped. Her son. But then, her eyes went to the bottom of the chest. There was something else. An old photograph. Like that painting, but this time there was another face in it. A little boy, whose eyes were looking straight at Natalie. And suddenly, the necklace inside the chest rose into the air on its own, and that same painting appeared again on the walls. But now there were two people in it. Margot, and her son. Natalie looked closely at the painting. For the first time, the second face in it, an innocent child, didn't have fear in his eyes, but anger. Is this the boy, for whom Margot keeps coming back? Natalie asked herself. At that moment, whispers began to echo from the basement walls like many voices speaking at once. Save us. You're too late now. She had locked her son in a cage. Now he will imprison everyone the same way. Imprison. Natalie turned around, but the stairs had disappeared. The basement was now sealed like a tomb. The air began to grow cold, and a shadow slowly emerged. A child, but his face was half rotted, half burned, and his eyes were completely red. The same boy, who was in the painting. Did my mother send you? His voice didn't sound human at all. Natalie backed away. Who are you? They burned me alive, but my mother promised she would bring me back, and you are the way. The way. Natalie's breathing grew faster. The boy slowly began to rise in the air. Behind him, a door appeared on the wall, like a dimension opening up. And there, a map was visible. Fairchild Mental Asylum, Maine. Natalie's eyes widened in shock. This was the place where Margot was last seen. And where her son had gone missing. Now Natalie had to go there. Not just to save her life, but to end this curse once and for all. Natalie set out for Maine the very next day. There was no record of Fairchild Mental Asylum on Google. No map, no article. Just one blurry photo found on Reddit with a caption. People don't go there. They disappear. In the torrential rain, after crossing winding mountain paths, Natalie reached deep into a dense forest. GPS had stopped working, her phone signal was gone, but she knew the way. She had seen it in the painting. There it was, the building. Broken windows, crumbling stones, and black fungus growing over the walls. It wasn't a building, it looked like death itself had drained it. The door creaked open on its own. As soon as she stepped inside, a strong stench jolted Natalie. As if thousands of rotting bodies had been buried there all at once. Screaming figures of children were drawn on the walls, with blood dripping from their eyes. And suddenly the door slammed shut. Thud. Natalie screamed, "No! No. Let me out. Then came a dragging sound from behind her. Shish. Mother is sleeping, don't make noise. Natalie turned around. There stood the boy, but now in his hand was a can of petrol and a matchbox. They burned me right here, in this very room. Now you'll see what I'll do. The walls suddenly caught fire. But the flames were blue, and without any heat, as if souls were burning. Natalie now understood. This boy was not made of flesh, he was made of hatred. If I find his mother, will all this stop? She asked in fear. The boy didn't speak, just wrote a name on the wall with his finger. Drive Gertrude Holloway. Who was she? Natalie asked herself. Suddenly, the wall cracked open, revealing a new gallery, filled with old psychiatric patient files. One file read, patient name, Margot Blackwell. Diagnosis, severe hallucinations. Believes she's living in 1871. Child, taken away and deemed deceased. Last note before death. I'll paint my son into existence. Even death can't keep us apart. Natalie's hands began to tremble. Margot had been labeled insane and locked away in the asylum. Her son was declared dead. And perhaps from that very pain, she became trapped in the painting. Now Natalie understood. This painting wasn't just art. It was a cursed doorway, through which a soul could come out. Or you could go in. Natalie was now inside Fairchild Asylum, but now every room began showing her a glimpse of another era. The clocks hanging on the walls were ticking backwards. And every time she opened a door, the same room appeared again. As if the building had turned into a maze that was swallowing both time and truth. You can't find the way, until you lose yourself. That voice came again, from inside the walls. A slow, rough whisper of an elderly woman. Natalie knew she was no longer just fighting the ghost of that child. She was now about to talk to Margot, the woman from the painting herself. Suddenly, she entered a room that was completely different from the rest. Perfectly clean, old furniture, red velvet curtains. And a new painting was hanging on the wall. It was a picture of Natalie, and she was crying. She had just started to step back when suddenly a sound came from behind the curtain. Soft, like dragging clothes. With trembling hands, Natalie pulled back the curtain. There sat an old woman, with pale, lifeless hair, a face full of wrinkles. But her eyes, they were just like in the painting, blood red. I told them I would bring my son back. Natalie asked fearfully, are you Margot? The woman bowed her head and said, they called me mad, took my child away from me. And then locked me inside these icy walls. But I never broke my promise. I poured him into the colors, and now he has entered you. What? He will come out through you. You are not just another human, Natalie. You are the canvas. Another way to complete my painting. Through your body my son will be born again. Her voice had now become badly cracked and echoing. Suddenly, hands started emerging from the walls. As if the entire building had come alive. One by one, the hands started grabbing Natalie, pulling her toward the painting, the one that had her image. Just then, an old file fell from Natalie's pocket, the same one she had taken from the basement. As soon as it hit the ground, the building began to tremble. And the walls screamed, don't open his room. Natalie remembered there was a corner in the file that was mentioned again and again. Room 313, do not enter. But now she had to go there. Because the truth was there and so was death. Natalie's heart was pounding so hard that she could no longer hear her own breath. Blood had started seeping through the cracks in the walls. And every path was turning toward room 313. As if the entire building only wanted her to go there. Room 313, a door that had never opened. But now, it was slowly creaking open on its own. Behind the door, smoke, darkness, and a stench that could burn your lungs. The room inside was so vast, it was impossible. As if it was a passage to another world. There were no paintings on the walls. The walls themselves were the canvas. And on them were not colors, but figures made of human blood. In every figure, the same boy, the same woman, and now a third face. Natalie's. You are the final stroke of my painting, a slow, echoing voice spread across the room. And when it's complete, my son and I will be free forever. Natalie told herself, don't be afraid. This is just a place, just bricks and memories. But then a painting came out of the wall. And came to life. Out of it stepped a figure, half its face burned, eyes sunken deep, but a smile that no human could ever wear. You are the one who saw him. Now he will see you, forever. The figure extended its hand toward Natalie. Not a hand, but a paintbrush, made of human bone. Take it, it said, give the final stroke with your blood, and set us free. Natalie picked up the brush, and at that moment, the ground began to shake. The ceiling of the room split open, and something was there. A massive eye, so huge, it stared through the entire ceiling. That eye seemed to pierce directly into Natalie's mind. She saw Margot's past. The tortures by the doctors. The child being burned alive. Being declared insane, and locked within the walls. And now, their souls had become trapped inside a painting. Caught in an eternal cycle. But this cycle would break, only if Natalie gave her soul to the painting. Or else, Natalie whispered, I could burn it. And she threw the brush to the floor, pulling out a Zippo lighter. But wait, a voice came from behind. If you burn the painting, the child will burn with it. The one who was never even guilty. Now Natalie stands at a crossroads. 1. Burn the painting and end all of this, but destroy an innocent soul in the process. 2. Or offer herself to the painting to save the others but never return. Natalie's hand trembled as she held the Zippo lighter. Her eyes were fixed on the painting. And now her own face in it looked more alive than ever. Her eyes inside the painting were blinking. And her lips softly whispered, help me. Behind her, Margot's spirit floated in the air. No longer resembling anything human. Her body had turned to smoke, ash, and burning black clothes. Her eyes glowed like blood. If you burn it, her voice now echoed from every wall. You won't just kill me. But also him, the one still trapped inside my child. Natalie turned around, her hands beginning to burn. As if the brush's touch had been like living fire. Suddenly, the ground in front of the painting cracked open. A pit emerged, swallowing all the rotting past within. Natalie. A small, innocent voice came, that of a little boy. The same boy she had seen again and again in the paintings. I'm trapped inside, but I'm not afraid anymore. You are, because she wants to make you a painting too. So she'll never be alone again. Natalie understood now. This wasn't just revenge. It was a mother's insane desperation. A woman who never accepted her son's death. Who went mad with love and turned her own soul into a canvas. And now she wanted everyone to be trapped within that same canvas. Room 313 was now falling apart completely. Hundreds of faces peeked from the walls. Each one screaming, each eye melting, each tongue crying out the same word, paint me. Natalie felt like her mind would explode. She lit the Zippo. And was about to bring the brush close to the flame. When suddenly the entire room jolted to a halt. And on the wall ahead, a crack appeared. From it came a bright blue light. Like another world entirely. Peace, coolness, and the scent of truth. The boy's voice came again. If you free me, everything will stop, but you must listen to me. My final memory is inside that trunk. The one Margot always kept hidden. Natalie asked in a trembling voice. What trunk? Under her room in a drawer. No one's ever opened it. Natalie ran out immediately. The walls of room 313 still trying to swallow her. But somehow she made it out. She was back in the same corridor where the walls breathed. Something or someone followed her at every step. But she was no longer the prey. She was now searching for answers. She returned to the room where she had first found the painting. The curtains were torn, the walls scratched. She dropped to her knees and pulled back the carpet. Underneath was a rusted trapdoor. She opened it, and saw a small, dark room below. Inside it was an old iron trunk. Small handprints still marked its surface. As if someone had knocked from inside for years. Natalie placed her hand on the trunk. Her fingers felt as if they were sinking into ice. This trunk was not just old. It felt alive somehow. She gently touched the rusty lock. It was old but still closed. But as soon as Natalie turned the lock, click, the lock opened by itself. A sound like an old breath came from inside the trunk. As if someone was breathing a sigh of relief after centuries. Natalie lifted the lid. What was inside? An old diary. A children's sketchbook. And a small red jacket stained with blood. The diary belonged to Margot. But the first few pages were written in another handwriting. A man's. The 27th of July 1892. Margot kept screaming again today. She refused to bury the child's body. She says, he is still breathing. But I saw. Her lips were blue, her pulse was stopped. Natalie's lips dried up. She read the next page. The 28th of July 1892. Margot now wants to turn that dead body into a painting. She says, if I make his face immortal, his soul will never leave. I'm scared. This woman is no longer my wife. Natalie's eyes then fell on the sketchbook. It had dozens of pictures drawn by a child's hands. Sometimes his mother crying, sometimes locking himself in a trunk. And one sketch showed him trapped inside the trunk, while someone outside was painting him. Natalie felt suffocated. She had buried the child alive, and painted over him. Suddenly, the walls of the room started shaking again. A dragging sound came from behind. Natalie turned. Margot's spirit now looked completely decayed and burning. But there was no anger anymore. Just empty eyes. You touched my memories. Now you must live in that trunk. Forever. With my son. Margot reached her hand toward the trunk, and its lid began to open by itself. It was no longer just a trunk, but a gateway to another world, where children's laughter and screams echoed. Natalie stepped back, but the ground beneath her feet started melting. Then a hand came out from the trunk. The same child. His face was alive now, but incomplete. He said softly, if you take me out, I can end everything. Tears flowed from Natalie's eyes. But then paintings started falling from the ceiling. Each painting had a face. One that Natalie recognized. Old hotel staff, tourists, children, and her own mother. Her mother. Natalie started trembling badly, because one painting showed the same face that she had seen in her childhood, when she first came to this hotel. And now everything was falling into place. She had come to this hotel as a child for the first time. Her mother disappeared here, and since then, a fear had settled inside Natalie. She didn't even know what she was afraid of. Now it was her choice. Either free the child, or become trapped inside the trunk herself. At that moment, a clock on the wall started ticking. With hands moving backwards, every tick-tock brought her closer to her decision. Natalie was now bent over the trunk. A hand was coming out of it. A child's hand. Wet, cold, but very real. She heard that slow voice ringing in her ears. Take me out, I can end everything. But Natalie no longer trusted it. Because every spirit was showing something different. Suddenly she remembered. On the hotel's first day, when she came downstairs, she had seen a strange staircase in the basement. That did not go down straight, but slanted a little, like leading to a maze. Maybe Margot hadn't locked the trunk here, but it had been dragged from somewhere else and brought here. If this trunk is a trap, then the real story is still hidden. Instead of pulling the child out, Natalie put her hand inside the trunk. But it was no bottom. Her hand was going inside as if in water. A shock hit her, and in the depth of the trunk, she found herself falling. She was now inside the trunk, but it was a room. The walls were covered with pictures stained with blood. Each picture had a child, and a woman, who was slowly pulling out everyone's eyes. Margot. There was a corner where candles were burning, and in between them was a line drawn, with only one name, the album. Natalie went closer and looked. A thick photo album. But this album was not filled with pictures, rather cut-out faces. As she flipped every page, children's screams echoed in the room. You rejected my art, Natalie. Margot's spirit came out from the wall. Now her face was not human, but made of melted paint and bones. People like you could never understand my art. I made children immortal, so that they never feel pain. Natalie screamed. You killed them. You stole their childhood. Margot laughed. And you think you are different? You killed yourself by coming to this hotel. You escaped from this place as a child. But your mother stayed. And now, you have come back, alone. Natalie's breath stopped. My mother. Then a door behind her opened by itself. A blue light was shining from inside. There, sitting on a chair, was her mother. But she was not alive. She was melting like wax. Her eyes kept repeating one thing. Save me, take me out of this painting. Natalie now understood. Not every spirit can be saved. But if she burned the album, maybe everyone would be freed. She took a candle from the room and set fire to the album. A loud scream. The walls shook. The trunk trembled. Margot burned and fell inside. And the whole room echoed with the screams of mute children. But the story did not end there. Because as soon as Natalie opened her eyes, she was again in that same hotel room. But now there was a new painting on the wall. It was Natalie, her eyes slowly turning toward the viewer. Who will come next? The same old hotel room. But now there was a new painting hung inside. It was Natalie's face. Her eyes slowly moved here and there, as if trying to see who would enter next. The Rosewood Inn Hotel was now completely deserted. But the strange thing was, this room was booked every week, on its own. A travel agent would receive a call. A name would be given. We are sending a guest under Karma Manor Art Experience. And then, every time, some artist was sent to that room. This time came Theodore, a young photographer, struggling with loneliness, talking only through his pictures. He had a camera, which could capture people's souls. He had come here for an art project. Haunted spaces where emotion bleeds. When Theodore stepped into the room, he was immediately drawn to the painting on the wall. The painting that was now faintly smiling. He lifted his camera and took a photo. The flash went off, and a jolt hit. Natalie's eyes in the painting closed. But next to the wall, a new shadow started to emerge. Theodore felt, this canvas is not just art. It's someone's scream, someone's memory, and maybe someone's punishment. At night, the room's lights started flickering. In the bedroom mirror appeared a face, exactly like the one Natalie had seen. A child without eyes. Theodore was so scared he couldn't even move. When a voice echoed, "Did you capture her in your camera?" Theodore immediately looked at the camera. On the screen was Natalie. But she was slowly smiling at him. "You saw me, now I will see you." Her eyes began to peek out of the screen. Theodore shouted. But his voice didn't leave the room. Now there were 4 paintings on the walls, each with a different face. But all their eyes were looking at the camera. A voice echoed, "Theodore, can you turn your pain into art?" Melted blood started rising from the floor. And the camera started taking pictures by itself. With every click, the walls screamed. Theodore ran. But as soon as he opened the room's door, outside was not the old hotel corridor, but an art gallery, where Margot's paintings were hung. In every painting, was a person, a clock, and a door. Theodore saw. The clock's hands were moving backwards. He understood. This gallery was a time loop. And his soul was about to become part of this artwork. He reached the last room of the gallery, where a chair was placed. And the wall in front of it was blank. A brush and colors were set. A voice said, "You have to make your deepest memory. And lock yourself inside it." Theodore slowly picked up the brush. He painted a face on the wall. And that face was his mother's. He was trembling badly, but his hand wouldn't stop. As soon as he finished the painting, the room shook. A hand came out from the wall. His mother's hand. But she was not a spirit. She was alive, or rather, never really died. And then Margot's voice came from behind. Every artist gives birth to their own fear. Theodore's eyes went wide open. His mother, the very face he had painted on the wall, was now standing in front of him. But she was not his mother, she had become something else. Her face was just like an old photograph he had seen. A photo of a woman who died at the Rosewood Inn in 1954. Theodore's breaths quickened. Mom, he asked in a trembling voice. The woman smiled. You finally recognized me. But you were dead. I wasn't dead, I was killed. And the one who killed me now lives within the walls of this room. Theodore pulled out an old photo, which he had taken from the hotel basement. Written on the back was, Eleanor Monroe, artist, missing, October 9, 1954. It was the same face. Theodore's mother. Now the truth began to unfold. Theodore's mother, Eleanor, was a famous artist. In the 1950s, she had come to the Rosewood Hotel to attend an art retreat. But under the name of that retreat, there was a secret art cult, the Unseen Gaze, where artists were connected to their souls to create live paintings, which trapped the artist's breaths, memories, and pain inside. Eleanor tried to break this tradition, and then a painter named Margot deceitfully trapped her inside the wall. She didn't become a painting. She became the soul of the wall. And now, she could see everything. Every guest, every scream, every color. Theodore, who until now was just an artist, now knew the story of his own blood. His mother said, now your camera will do what my brush once did. You will show the truth, but you will pay the price. What price? Your eyes, your memories, and your fear. At that moment, the walls of the room began to melt. From all around came sobbing, laughter, and whispers from old times. Natalie's voice was heard too. Theodore, don't listen to them. They will make you like me. Theodore turned. Natalie was now crying in the painting. Suddenly, a new chest appeared in the center of the room. It was the same chest Natalie had opened in the basement. But now it was bigger and it was beating. Theodore slowly stepped forward, reached out his hand. As soon as he touched the chest, a loud scream echoed. The room plunged into darkness. And now, the chest was open. But inside was nothing, except an upside-down hanging painting. It had a stranger's face. Cut, burned half, black holes instead of eyes. And below it was written, The Collector. Theodore stepped back. His mother's voice echoed again. This is the one who trapped me. This is the one who defeated Margot. And now it's searching for you. The Collector was gathering all the spirits of the Rosewood Hotel, one by one, to trap their stories, their art, in an endless gallery. Then, Theodore saw a door on the ceiling of the room. He asked his mother, What is that? She said, That door is not of time. It will take you to those who don't even appear in the paintings anymore. The room was drowned in darkness. The walls were breathing. The chest was still beating. And then a strange humming echoed. He paints what he traps and he traps what he paints. The voice belonged to someone else. But it held pain, anger, and trust all at once. Theodore looked around. Natalie. It was Natalie's voice but changed. Her voice now sounded like a soul freed from captivity. Then suddenly, an old painting on the wall shook. It showed Natalie. But now she was not afraid. Her eyes glowed red. Her face burned with hatred. I am no longer the one who came to the hotel. Natalie said. I wasn't trapped in the painting, I was locked inside myself. Now I hear, I see. And now I will speak too. In front of Theodore, the painting's wall cracked, and there was a small, dark room, where Natalie's true soul sat. Candles burning all around, and unfinished paintings. Natalie's story now began. When she had reached the basement, she saw a small boy, sitting with his head bowed, alone. That boy was the first painting of the Collector. But as soon as Natalie tried to talk to him, the boy looked into her eyes, and saw everything Natalie wanted to hide. Guilt, fear, loneliness, and the secret of her mother's death. The Collector trapped Natalie's soul, but couldn't win her mind. Because Natalie was not one to lose herself in art. She was one to weaponize art. She began changing herself inside the painting, sharpening herself with hatred in every brushstroke, weaving a trap in every color. Now she has returned, in a form no one recognizes. The Red Muse, the red-eyed spirit, who will no longer let herself be trapped in any painting. She told Theodore. You open this door. But not alone. Take me with you. I am no longer just a painting, I am a weapon. Then the red light from Natalie's painting entered Theodore's eyes. Now his eyes were no longer normal. He could see those souls beyond the paintings. The lost artists. Now Theodore was not alone. With him were Natalie, as the red spirit, his mother, as the soul of the wall, and an old shadow which until now was hidden. And before them stood that door, which was beyond any time, beyond any room. The door slowly opened. Along with the black smoke, an old, stale aura of colors emerged. As if someone had pressed down centuries of lives trapped inside paintings. Theodore and Natalie were no longer ordinary humans. An artist, a soul, and a passion. All three had now become one. Natalie's red eyes had become even sharper. She could now recognize every color that was once a human being. Behind the door was a long hall, lined with thousands of paintings. Each frame held a face. Afraid, broken, but alive. And standing in the center was the collector. He was no longer human. His face had become a blank canvas. Every time someone looked at it, it would change. Why have you come back? The collector's voice held a false calm. Natalie replied, to take back those you buried forcefully into art. Theodore pulled out an old brush, one that once belonged to his mother. That brush no longer held ink, but was filled with the light of souls. He made the first stroke in the air, and a radiant crack appeared across the paintings. The paintings began to move. Not screams, voices of hope echoed. The souls whose faces had been trapped in colors for centuries now wanted to come out. The collector screamed, if these souls escape, then I will cease to exist. Natalie smiled and said, art is a medium of freedom, not imprisonment. And then, she placed both her palms on the wall of paintings, the very place where her own soul was first imprisoned. A burst of brilliant red light exploded, and all the canvases shattered into pieces. Every soul that had ever been trapped was now floating in the air, smiling, silent, and free. Theodore looked at his mother. She gave a gentle smile and disappeared peacefully. The collector was now left alone, within his blank canvas, where there was no color left, only silence. The story didn't end there. Theodore and Natalie left that old hotel. But before leaving, they took the chest, the paintings, and every soul's connection with them. Now they run an art gallery, where every painting tells the story of a liberated soul. And most importantly, now no painting follows you with its eyes. Instead, it touches your heart. Happy ending, but remember, if you ever see a depth in a painting, beyond the eyes, perhaps someone is still trapped within. Far from the city lies a quiet place, Blackridge, where the trees are so dense that sunlight doesn't even reach the ground. In this deserted area, a couple, Mira and Jonathan, move into their new rented house. Mira is a school teacher and Jonathan is a photographer. They are planning to have a baby, but haven't conceived yet. Their new house is quite old, a Victorian-style home built in the 1800s. The landlord gave it to them at a very cheap rate, with just one condition: keep the room upstairs locked. The first night was normal, but when the clock struck 2:03 a.m., Mira suddenly woke up to a strange scream. Very faint, but very clear, the sound of a newborn baby crying. She sat up with a jolt, and Jonathan also woke up. Jonathan, with a trembling voice, that sound, maybe from some nearby alley. But the sound slowly started coming from inside the house from the upper floor. The next day, Mira decided to open the room that the landlord had asked them to keep shut. There was an old lock on the door, as if no one had touched it for years. Jonathan tried to stop her, but Mira insisted, I'm a school teacher. I don't believe in superstition. The lock broke, and the door creaked open slowly. The room inside was dark, but as soon as the curtain was pulled back from the window, something appeared amidst layers of dust. An old wooden cradle, and in that cradle lay a worn-out doll wrapped in a white cloth, but there was something strange on its face, like someone had forcefully torn it, and dry red streaks flowed from its mouth. Mira, softly, it's just a doll then who was crying last night. Jonathan began to feel suffocated in the room. He pulled Mira out and shut the door again. But that night, the crying returned, louder, closer. Mira was now getting scared. The next day, she went to the local library to find out more about the house's history. While flipping through old newspaper archives, she came across a report. 1903. A woman named Margaret Bell killed her newborn baby in the upstairs room and then hanged herself. Her husband, a military officer, had died in war far away. Margaret had become mentally unstable. They say, that night she laid the baby in the cradle and, humming a lullaby on the swing. The baby's breath stopped forever. Now it wasn't just the crying at night, someone started whispering Mira's name slowly, Mira, you're my mother, right? One night, Mira woke up to find the cradle was now in their bedroom. Jonathan asked, did you bring it down from upstairs? Mira replied, I didn't even touch it. But the cradle was rocking. On its own. And at that moment a baby's giggle followed by a loud shriek echoed through the room. Jonathan ran over and flipped the cradle empty. Now Mira was sure someone was here, trying to say something. One night, Mira sees Margaret in a dream, a woman in a white gown, tangled in messy hair, part of her face burned, and black ink-like tears flowing from her eyes. Margaret looks at Mira and says, I killed my baby, but I thought I was saving her from pain. Now every night I search for her, but she never returns. Are you my baby? Mira wakes up in fear, but by now, Margaret's spirit had already taken hold of her. Mira had started to change. She would talk to herself, stare into nothingness, and often burst into tears without any reason. One night, Jonathan followed her. Mira slowly climbed the stairs again toward the locked room, muttering to herself. Mira, softly, I've come back, I want my baby. Jonathan shook her. Mira. What are you saying? But Mira's eyes had turned black, and with a slow, horrifying laugh, she said, Mira is no more, Margaret is back. Jonathan stepped back. In front of him was no longer his wife, but a century-old spirit. Jonathan contacted a local paranormal expert, Dr. Eugene Hartman, who researched old spirits and cursed houses. As soon as Dr. Eugene entered the house, he said, this spirit isn't just trapped, it wants to reclaim its place. It believes Mira is her child. If something isn't done soon, Mira will disappear forever. He began a ritual. A circle was made with candles, the old cradle was placed in the center, and Margaret's spirit was summoned. Suddenly, the room turned cold, the windows shut on their own, and the cradle began to shake violently. Then Margaret's voice echoed in the air. If you don't want my child, then give me back my death. During the ritual, Eugene saw something far more dangerous. Margaret's spirit was that of an innocent mother, but it had been taken over by someone else. A male spirit, Margaret's husband, Captain Desmond Bell. Desmond hadn't died in war. He returned, wounded, and found Margaret killing their own child. Desmond locked Margaret in that room, forcing her to die slowly, and even after her death, he trapped her spirit. Now, it was Desmond who was forcing Margaret's spirit into Mira, so he could relive life with his wife and child. Eugene shouted, this isn't Margaret's story, it's the story of a madman who now lives on as a ghost. When Jonathan and Eugene dug into the basement of the house, they found piles of old human bones. Each bone had a name carved near it and a small toy. Eugene said, Desmond didn't just kill Margaret, but also other women and children. This house has become his hunting ground. Whoever enters, he traps them to be part of his family. Mira now fully believed she was Margaret. And looking at Jonathan, she said, Desmond, now we can be one again. Jonathan was terrified. Eugene revealed the final solution to send the house back in time. A special ritual that begins exactly at 2:03 a.m., the same time when the baby's cry was first heard. That moment was part of a time loop when Margaret killed her baby for the first time. If that moment could be changed, the spirit could be set free. The night came, the ritual began, and Jonathan found himself in 1903 in the room with Margaret, holding her baby, and behind her stood a terrifying figure, Desmond. A strong cold wind pulled Jonathan in. When he opened his eyes, he found himself standing in an old, dusty room. Old portraits on the walls, oil lamps, a wooden cradle, and snow falling outside the window. In front of him sat Margaret, holding a crying baby in her lap, but her face was trembling with fear. Margaret fearfully, "He's back, Desmond is back," he says. "This baby isn't his." Suddenly, there was a loud bang. The door burst open and a tall, furious man entered, Desmond Bell. He held a bloody belt in his hand, and hatred gleamed in his eyes. Desmond roaring, "Liar! You betrayed me, this baby isn't mine." Jonathan stepped back. He realized, this was the exact moment when Margaret killed her baby, or maybe Desmond did. But the truth was something else entirely. Jonathan saw Margaret crying. He ran, snatched the baby from her lap, and dashed out of the room. Desmond followed. They ran up the stairs. The old wooden house groaned, as if the walls themselves were screaming. Jonathan reached the rooftop with the baby. Snow was falling, dark clouds loomed in the sky, and lightning cracked in the distance. Desmond screamed, "She's mine. Give her back." Jonathan replied, "Margaret wasn't going to kill her, you did it, to hide your madness." Desmond screamed, and just then, lightning struck the sky. The entire house trembled. As the lightning struck, Jonathan's eyes closed and he found himself in another time. Now it was 1927. The weather was the same, but the house was older, and another family now lived inside. An old woman was cooking and her granddaughter was playing alone on the rooftop. Jonathan was shocked. The little girl looked just like Margaret. And then suddenly, a shadow on the rooftop pushed her from behind and the girl fell. The old woman screamed, "My granddaughter is dead." Jonathan ran, but the girl was already gone. Eugene's voice echoed in his ears. "Desmond has been committing murders in different pieces of time within this house. This isn't just Margaret's story, this is the world built by a demon." Jonathan turned toward the basement this time. The basement looked like it was from 1927, but the walls were still stained with blood. He pressed his ear to the wall and a voice whispered from inside, "Let us out, we are watching in every time." Jonathan picked up a hammer and smashed the wall. A skeleton fell out, then another, and black light glowed from the eyes of each one. One of them looked at Jonathan and said, "Desmond killed us, but our souls are trapped in time. You must go to every time, stop every murder." Jonathan struggled to breathe. The walls began spinning and he collapsed unconscious. This time, Jonathan woke up in a completely different era, 1954. A boy, Ben, was alone in the house. It was his birthday, but no one had come. Ben was playing with a small toy house, which looked exactly like the real one. Jonathan watched as Ben placed a doll inside the toy house, and at that exact moment, a window in the real house opened on its own. Then he broke a door in the toy house and a door in the real house burst open on its own. Jonathan trembled in fear. Ben laughed and said, "Desmond gave me this toy. He said I can control real people." Then Ben placed a miniature of Jonathan inside the toy house and Jonathan's leg broke. Screams echoed. Now we are shown Eugene in the present day Mira, where Mira has suddenly begun talking in her sleep. "I saved the baby, but now I'm stuck in that time." Eugene realizes Jonathan's soul is traveling through different times, but his mind is connected to Mira. Eugene takes out a talisman, the blood charm, which can break that connection. But doing so could trap Jonathan in time forever. Blood begins to flow from Mira's eyes and she screams, "Desmond is coming, he will kill Jonathan there and then I'll become his body." Jonathan has now reached the year 1979. Everything around him is silent, but this time, the room he's standing in is not like the last one, it's completely different. The room is soaked in blood. There is no clock on the walls, but a ticking sound is coming from inside the wall. As soon as he touches the walls begin to open on their own, and in front of him, a round room appears. Completely red. Everything red. Jonathan, scared, steps inside the room. Children's voices echo on the walls but in different languages of different eras. Help. Past. Save us. Present. He has come. Future. Jonathan realizes, this is the Red Room that exists in every era, but not in any one place. It is timeless. And there's only one thing in this room, a black mirror door. As soon as Jonathan opens the door, there is nothing inside, just darkness. And then, two white eyes open. The Devourer. This is not a human. Not a spirit. It is the darkness that consumed Desmond's soul, and created events across all time periods to satisfy its hunger. Desmond was just a puppet, but the strings were in the hands of this Red Room and the Devourer inside it. The Devourer speaks, its voice echoes in Jonathan's mind, like hundreds of souls crying together. I don't break time, I create time, so they get lost, so they die in fear, so their souls become my feast. Jonathan trembles. He wants to turn back, but the door has already closed. The Devourer moves forward and it has no feet, it floats, like a shadow. You are no longer just a time traveler, you are my next host, Jonathan. Meanwhile, in the present, Myra's eyes have turned completely white. Eugene tries to lift her, but she falls to the ground and a scream escapes her mouth. The Red Room has opened. A sentence appears on the wall written in blood. Rescue Jonathan, or all time will end. Eugene understands. They must now enter that Red Room of time. But how? He pulls out the old book they found with Margaret, and a line inside begins to glow. Only the one who has seen the Devourer can kill it. Inside the Red Room, the Devourer begins to show Jonathan memories of his childhood. His mother's screams, his father's death, and every fear he endured as a child. Jonathan begins to suffocate. He falls to his knees. The Devourer softly says, Margaret didn't kill her child. I did. I created him from your fears. Jonathan's screams echo through the Red Room, but suddenly a beam of light falls into the room. The door opens again. Mira has entered. In her hand is the same amulet, the one Eugene had given her. Mira shouts, Jonathan, get up. This is all a lie. This is your fear, not the truth. As soon as Mira raises the amulet in the air, its glow fills the entire Red Room. The Devourer screams, but it's no ordinary scream, it's like 100 souls burning in fire at once. Its shadow begins to melt. Jonathan gathers courage, stands up, and runs toward Mira. But the Devourer is not completely destroyed. Just as Jonathan and Mira step out through the door, the Devourer lunges one last time and touches Jonathan's back. Just for a moment, but Jonathan's eyes roll back. Mira panics. Jonathan, are you okay? Jonathan slowly looks at her. He's inside me, his voice now echoes in two different tones. As Mira and Jonathan return to the present, Eugene sees them, but everything has changed. Margaret's house has now turned into an old church. A board hangs in front of the house, Street. Daria Orphanage. Since 1894. Eugene says, we've changed time, but maybe in the wrong direction. Mira says, the Devourer isn't dead, he's just changed form. Jonathan's eyes are still white. His hands are trembling. And he softly murmurs, the children, they've started crying again. Eugene takes all three inside the church, which now looks like an orphanage. Inside, there's a room, an old nursery, old toys on the walls, swings, and a broken crib. But no children. Yet the sound of crying is present. Jonathan slowly walks toward the crib. Underneath it, there's a black wooden drawer. He opens the drawer and finds an old diary. Written by Margaret. The pages of the diary are torn. But what's written shocks everyone. I didn't kill my child, my baby was taken from me. Someone bound his soul to the Red Room. I had seen them, the eyes behind that door. And the soul that haunts me, it's not my son, it's something else. Jonathan instantly understands the ghost that started it all isn't Margaret's son, but the Devourer's first host. And in every time, it is born as a child and pulls people toward itself through the Red Room. As soon as the diary ends, blood begins to drip from the crib. The toys start moving on their own. On the wall, a name appears by itself, Desmond Jr. Mira shivers. Was this Desmond's son or a new entity? Eugene says, maybe this was the Devourer's first avatar. And this is what's running the entire time loop. Jonathan yells, I can see it, the door to the next time loop has opened. As soon as Jonathan screams, everything starts changing again. The walls of the room begin to melt. Blood is no longer dripping from the toys, but from their eyes. Then something strange happens as soon as they enter this time loop, everyone's voices vanish. Mira tries to say something to Eugene but her lips move, and no sound comes out. Jonathan tries to speak too, but silence. This time loop is the silent loop, where if you try to speak, the spirit steals your voice. In this loop, they reach a new place, an ancient library, known as the Library of Unspoken Words. Each shelf holds books that trap voices inside them. Mira picks up a book. Do not open until the final cry. But Jonathan accidentally opens a book and blood starts flowing from his ears. A white face, without eyes and mouth, peers out from the book. This is the listener, a spirit who steals the voices of those who read forbidden knowledge. Eugene makes a mistake. He pulls a vine hanging on the wall, which opens a secret door. As soon as he steps inside the door, he vanishes instantly. Mira and Jonathan search for him, but no sound, no footprints. Only Eugene's name on the wall, and below it is written. Spoken where he shouldn't have. In the center of the library, an empty cradle floats in the air. Above it hangs a Mobius loop, a symbol that shows this time loop is infinite, with no end. Near the cradle, there is an old tape recorder, on which it says, play only if you want to hear the truth. Jonathan switches it on. A voice begins, not of a human, a child's voice, which suddenly turns into that of an old man. I was the first one the Devourer took, not Desmond Jr. There was someone before him, and in every loop I run from you, but each time you find me. Mira gathers courage and screams loudly, for the first time tearing her throat. She screams, leave us alone. The voice is so loud and true that the listener steps back, his skin starts to burn. And the books in the library start catching fire. Jonathan regains his voice too. Eugene suddenly falls from behind a wall, unconscious but alive. But everything is not over yet. The cradle is no longer empty. There's a child sitting inside, whose eyes look like the Devourer's, but he's smiling. And then he speaks. Hi, Mira. Remember me? The child sitting in the cradle smiles at Mira. In his eyes, there's a glimpse of the Devourer, but in his smile, there's something else, pain. He speaks softly. I'm not the Devourer, I'm what's left after he leaves. Jonathan and Mira look at each other. The child slowly rises. Now his eyes are changing, one holds red fire, the other a calm blue ocean. I've lived this loop 46 times before, each time I died, screaming, but I always come back. Mira asks, why? The child no longer speaks in human language, he speaks directly into their minds, a telepathic echo. Because every time, someone wakes me up, and this time, it's you, Mira. Jonathan suddenly steps back. There's fear on his face. Mira, your eyes. Mira's face is now trembling. It's not blood, but blue light pouring from her eyes. The child whispers from the cradle. You don't understand, Mira, you're not just trapped, you are the time loop. Eugene trembles. What the hell does that mean? The child replies. The original curse wasn't on the house or Desmond, it was placed on a soul. A girl who kept hearing cries in every life. In every loop she comes looking. She thinks she's saving someone, but she's the origin. Mira screams loudly, her memories spin rapidly, she sees glimpses of every past life. Victorian England, a girl hears baby cries and hangs herself. 1940s war camp, a woman carries a child she never gave birth to. 1991 New York, a therapist obsessed with dreams of babies burning. Now Mira. Behind the cradle, an old mirror stands. The child says, if you want truth, look. Mira walks toward the mirror. She sees herself, but in 46 different forms at once. Every form is crying at the moment of death. And every time, a shadow like the Devourer swallows her. Jonathan suddenly understands. Devourer is not a single soul, it's a hunger, a curse tied to Myra's soul. The child suddenly looks at Jonathan. And you think you're her friend. You always die for her. Every time. But you were once him. Mira is shocked. What? The child smiles. Jonathan, you were never her companion, you were the first devourer. You were given a choice once and you chose hunger. Jonathan's eyes widen. Suddenly, smoke rises from his body. Ancient symbols appear on his skin, not Desmond's, even older. Mira steps back. Jonathan screams, "No, this is a lie." But as he screams, the child sitting in the cradle vanishes. Everything disappears around them. Mira, Jonathan, and Eugene now stand in a white empty void, a place without time, without gravity. A resonating question floats in the air. Choose. Who will stay behind? Mira trembles. What if no one stays? The answer comes, then it begins again. Jonathan is now silent, his eyes hollow. Mira finally understands. Each time, someone is left inside the loop, that one becomes the next devourer, the next shrieking cradle. Mira hears that voice floating in the air. Choose who stays. Jonathan has completely changed now, his eyes are black, old symbols glowing on his body. Eugene looks unconscious, but Mira, she is calm now. She remembers one more thing, a dream that she saw before birth. Flashback within the time loop. Before Mira was born. A strange place where there is no time, no body. Small glowing spheres float in the air. A voice calls Mira. You were never meant to be born. You were an echo, a soul stuck in the between. Mira asks, why was I sent then? To be the key. To either continue the loop or break it forever. That's why you hear the baby cries, because they're your own. Lost versions of you from aborted timelines. Myra's face changes to horror. So I'm not just caught in the loop, I am the loop. Suddenly, around Mira hundreds of cradles appear. In every cradle, a child, and every child looks like Mira. Some are burnt, some incomplete, some have no faces at all. From every cradle echoes the same voice. Mommy, why did you leave me again? Mira starts crying, but not tears. Glowing threads flow from her eyes. Jonathan comes close again, now his voice is doubled, as if the devourer speaks through him. See, Mira, you created all of this. Your guilt, your grief fed me. Eugene, who was unconscious, suddenly his eyes open. But now his eyes are completely silver, as if some ancient force has entered him. Eugene speaks softly. Enough. Jonathan trembles. Who are you? Eugene's face begins to change, glowing tattoos appear on his skin, symbols inverted from the loop. I was the guardian of the between. Assigned to protect the key. Every time you tried to complete the loop I died. But this time I woke up first. He slams his hand on the ground. All around, the cradles begin to crack, every echo starts vanishing. Mira screams, wait, they're me, they're still me. Jonathan has now completely transformed into the devourer. He no longer looks human, his body is 8 feet tall, smoke swirls around him and shadowy arms emerge from his back. He moves toward Eugene and says, you think waking up gives you power? You were allowed to wake up. Because I want you to see how it ends. Eugene, shaking but firm, I won't let you hurt her again. Jonathan roars loudly and a shadow tears through Eugene's chest. Eugene falls, his breaths fading. Mira watches all this and now she feels no fear. She turns to Jonathan and says, you said I was the origin. But what if I was never meant to be the victim? She holds her breath and lets out a scream. But this is no ordinary scream. It is a dimensional frequency. A scream that damages time itself. The space around starts to break apart. Cradles, walls, ceiling all begin dissolving into air. Jonathan screams in pain. No. You'll destroy everything. Myra's eyes are now like 2 white suns. Myra's scream was not like any ordinary sound. She had opened a door. When she screamed, not just the house, but all of time trembled. Shadow hands suddenly appeared on the walls of every room. In the cradle, suddenly someone was sitting, not a baby, but a shadow, Myra's own shadow. Eugene runs while Jonathan shouts from behind. Don't touch the cradle. It's not what it looks like. But it was too late. The cradle suddenly rises and the whole ground shakes. The time loop doesn't break, instead it goes deeper and deeper. Suddenly, a trapdoor opens beneath the house. One no one had ever seen before. Eugene says, "This is not part of the house. This is connected to another reality." The three go down through the door. Below is a nursery, but it looks like from the 1800s. Wooden walls, lamp light, and on every wall a name is written, Mira. Below each name is a date. And every date is the date of Myra's death. Eugene finds an old diary. The Book of Forgotten Cries. It contains many names, and next to every name it says, taken by the house. But one name is very different from the rest. Isla Quinn, a child who broke the loop. Jonathan. She's the key, she figured it out. Maybe we can too. Tears flow from Myra's eyes. I know who Isla was. She was my sister, but mother left her in that same cradle when I was only 3 years old. Now it's clear this house is not a cursed place. It is a living soul, that first felt pain when Isla was left here. Since that day, the house screams every night in a child's voice, calling for a mother. And Mira comes back here every birth, to find her sister. But every time she arrives too late. Suddenly the air in the room grows heavy. From the walls comes a voice, a sweet lullaby. Sleep tight, don't cry, someone's coming by. Myra's eyes widen. That's Isla's voice. A shadow appears and then slowly takes human form. Isla, now a grown-up woman, but with the same pain, the same loneliness in her eyes. Isla. I waited for you. Every time, every life. But you never came. Mira. I tried, I swear I did. Isla. It's not your fault. It was never yours. But to end this we must forgive her. Now everything is revealed. Their mother didn't leave Isla in this house because of a curse, but to save herself from an unseen fear. Mira and Isla stand in front of the old picture on the wall, where their mother sits in front of the cradle, torn between pain and fear. Mira reaches out, and as she touches the picture, a white light spreads throughout the house. Jonathan and Eugene step back. Time stops. Mira and Isla hold each other's hands. And for the first time, the house becomes silent. The next morning, sunlight streams into the house. The diaries have burned, but one picture remains. Mira and Isla, two little girls, playing together. Eugene and Jonathan stand outside. Myra's mother, as a spirit, rises upward into the sky. Now no cradle moves. No screams come. Mira walks down the stairs of the house one last time, stops, and says, Isla, I'm sorry I was late. But now, we're finally home. The cradle in the attic turns to dust.